What's happening, guys? So we are back. This video is going to be mostly about genetics. It's going to be a walkthrough, another intro, just to kind of help break you in to breeding programs and some other different things. Today we're going to be looking at some tomatoes. I was working on breeding um, and just kind of show you guys how I think and process through the different genetics I have available. Um, I do mix, like in tomatoes, I will mix tomato strains. Some strains may fruit more, while other strains, maybe you're going for more of a flavor. And I'm going to just kind of give you a walkthrough of how I isolate those genetics, but keep them stable. So stability is the number one thing you really need to look for in genetics, and always go for stability before you go what you're looking for. You do not want to lose those genetics. Um, so a good example is to have different seeds, but don't mix them initially. Actually see if you like both of the strains before you start mixing, because I mean, once you lose a genetic, you'll never get that genetic again. Not quite like it was. You can get close, but I mean, we're talking genetics. The likelihood of you getting an identical is pretty much non-existent, because they're all going to be unique in their own way. Um, even clones. So like this is these are some clones that I have back here. Clones, they have their ups and downs. So some clones, even if it's genetically identical to the mother plant, it may produce bigger fruit than the clone two plants down. It may die. It may have a disease. May not be as disease resistant. So it really depends, and genetics are, it's a tipsy-turvy scale, but it is fun to play with, and it's a good idea because that means you'll always get the harvest that you want. So for example, an heirloom squash mixed with a standard yellow squash or a zucchini can make an insanely large watermelon of a squash if done appropriately, fed the right nutrients. When you see these monster crops, a lot of them have to do with genetic hunts, mixed with great soil, great nutrients, great watering practices, different things like that. Me personally, we have produced like zucchinis that were about 2 to 3 times the size of my forearm. They were a touch seedy. We did grow them a little bit, but not crazy. Not to where it was difficult. The seeds were still kind of tender, so it wasn't really an issue. Um, for so, Anywho, we'll go ahead and dive right into this. Let me put her down though. Oh no. All right, so this is a basic genetic chart, and this is not going to be as accurate as what you'll be dealing with, but it puts it in a form to where when you see it, you can kind of understand what I'm referring to. And yes, we did learn this in junior high, but it still does apply in terms of genetic hunting. And it's a great source to help you show what I mean by stabilizing genetics. Um, so whenever you have something that breeds continuously for 6 years and keeps a stable genetic line, that is referred to as a land race. Um, and the reason they refer to it as a land race is because that means where it grows in that particular area, that plant can tolerate everything that environment throws at it. It's healthy enough to survive no matter the condition. So if it's a drought, a drought environment, if this plant has bred 6 times there under drought conditions, it is now technically a drought tolerant plant. Tolerant and resistant are two different things people tend to forget about. Tolerant means, yeah, it can dry up, get pretty hot a couple times, but it doesn't mean that plant can survive without water. It is still a plant. Even cactuses and different succulents need water from time to time. So just remember that. Um, Anywho, whenever you're breeding, you want to go for these land races. Say you find a genetic that you really really like. Um, so you'll take the parent plant, and then it has seedlings. Now the parent plant, you need to save that. You have to save that plant. whether it be cloning, whether it be vegetating it until you've finished the stabilizing in the landrace of the strain, whatever that takes. So for here, what we did is we did two separate plants. This would be like if I was starting a new genetic. Say I mixed a Roma tomato with the standard steak tomato. Maybe I wanted a tomato to go on my burgers that was going to be nice and fat, but had kind of a weird football shape to it. I found it was interesting, and guests liked it. And maybe I was in the market, and I could sell more of a football shaped tomato. So what we're going to do is we're going to say A is the big steak tomato. Lots of fruit and minimal fruit. This is mostly going to be a fruit production. Now Roma tomatoes are going to be a little bit more specialized in terms of form and overall production. So what we're going to do is say that the Roma tomato was more of like how healthy or diseased it was. These are the traits that we're mainly mixing on the first set, but we liked it. We liked the fruit. So they're going to be B here. The large B is going to be diseased. The lowercase is going to be healthy, and we're going to mix it. So what that means is that in our first square here, if it was only to produce 4 seeds. Now this is only if it was to produce 4 seeds. Tomatoes produce so many more than that. So this is a very small scale example of what can happen. And you're not going to be able to just draw the genetics out. Not everyone has a science lab and the equipment for that. So this is just going to be an example of what to look for and what to do in practice. So in terms of what we're looking for, me as a grower, I would expect to have lots of fruit on a very healthy plant. I feel like that is bare minimum. As long as I like the fruit, I'm going to want a higher production on one plant, and I'm going to want the plant to be healthy so I don't have to spend as much time with it. So in this example, that's going to be a lowercase b, uppercase A. Now the parent plant that we chose was the steak tomato. And the reason is because it was lots of fruit and minimal production. So as long as we're working with the healthy plant, we've kind of bred out the diseased plant, and that's where the landrace comes in. So in this aspect, this is where the parent plant down here comes in. See, so it's the same one, parent plant. And then this is the lowercase b, which is healthy, and the uppercase A, which is going to be, and this is the child. This is from, where to go? Up here. So this is the child, and this is the parent plant. See, so we pulled one of the children down. Now we've bred out the diseased here. So now you can kind of have your cream of the crop. You get to pick what is important to you. Do you just want a heavy fruiter? Now, there are things to be aware of. Understand that if you go to an insane route, like if you try to breed out nothing but fruit production, there are going to eventually be other complications because plants are only really meant to do certain things. So when you kind of go outside of those realms, you may have other issues. So maybe this plant is an excessive water user. Tomatoes need an insane amount of water. So just because it's an excessive fruit production doesn't mean you're going to be able to keep up with this plant's particular demands. You still need that nutrient load, you still need that water load, and you still need the sunlight. Plants rely on 3 things, so really it depends on how well they can process all that. Sunlight, nutrients, and water have to be displayed in even amounts. Once you start mixing that up, it's going to go off the lowest. So if you have a whole bunch of water, not a whole lot of nutrients, and a whole bunch of sun, well, guess what? Your production is now going to baseline down here with your nutrients. So just keep that in mind whenever you're breeding. Now right here, what we did is we took a different route. So it was just showing, yes, you can continue this production 6 times and keep ending up with the same. Maybe this right here is on point with what you like. You're going to get a whole lot of production and you have a decent amount of healthy plants. So if something does happen, you still have plants to rely on that you can easily clone. Maybe you can breed them to clone. Again, breeding is a step-by-step thing. So we bred out the disease, and now what we're going to do is you would technically take some time and breed out small production. Um, just step by step. And again, that's why you save seeds. So, say you went to the heavy fruit production and you regretted it because you couldn't keep up with the nutrients or you couldn't keep up with the water. Well, you kept the seeds from the generation before that, and so now you just start over. It's no issue. You can continue to breed things out and in using these methods shown here. So see, this is where you would go towards a fruit production. And obviously you're always going to have non, so the reason there's a capital letter and a lowercase letter is one is going to be like a common genetic. I'm probably butchering the terms here, but basically one's going to be more common than the other. So it's like brown eyes versus blue eyes. Oh, recessive. Recessive genes are going to be your lowercase. They're not going to be as common, but if paired properly, one child would run with recessive genes, and then, of course, any genetics to follow that. And that's kind of where this comes in. And a good example of that is I have a cherry plant here. So this cherry plant is it's referred to as an F1. So I took a parent plant. I found a tomato that I really liked, and it wasn't very disease resistant. It wasn't. I mean, the only thing it had going is that the plant wanted to survive no matter what. And that's something that hardiness that it had. I mean, I forgot to water this plant for about 2 months. I kind of thought it was dead. I've ripped it up, left it outside freezing. I basically tried to butcher and kill this plant, and it would not die. For me, I want this in one of my genetic lines. I want to use it as a hardiness base. So if something like the disease and the healthy that we were looking at here, this would be a genetic I would save to plug in for that there. It would basically be two lowercase b's or a lowercase b with an uppercase b, because the dominant trait would be healthy in this case. But the downside is they don't clone. So if I was to mix this with something that clones insanely easy, for example, my F3s, and what the F stands for is it stands for generation. So F6 is like a land race, and it's like the holy god rail. You know what I mean? That's what growers, and genetic hunters go for. It's like the perfect plant. Whenever you go and buy seeds at the store, that's kind of what's happened. Some of them are exposed to radiation waves to force genetic mutations to kind of make it a little bit quicker, but they still have to plant. They still have to see what they like. It's still a genetic hunt. That's things like this. This is how corn today, as we know it, was made. It actually used to be little bitty, and now we have these huge, colorful ears of corn. That's genetics, guys. You can breed all of that as long as they're in the same family and gene pool. You can breed them. So like tomatoes here, like I said, just because we started with the cherry tomato doesn't mean we have to end with the cherry tomato. We can end with a watermelon tomato if we wanted. You can't mix the two, but like cucumber watermelons, how those crossbreed. A lot of the squash family crossbreed, so like pumpkin and zucchinis and stuff can breed. There's going to be ups and downs. It's a genetic hunt when you enter that realm. That you do need to be careful with that if you're seed saving. So don't try and do two squash family hunts at once. And again, always save seeds from prior generation to where you can start over. So if you accidentally do get some genetics from somewhere else, because at the end of the day, a lot of us are going to be growing outside. So pollinators, they're doing their job, but sometimes it's not always benefiting what you want. And that could be a good thing. So like I said, just really take time, sit down, figure out what you want, and take it step by step. I would always start with healthy, because from healthy you can move to fruit production. but it's harder to move from fruit production to healthy, in my experience. You may have a different experience. Again, it depends on what genetic lines you're working on. Uh, but again, just follow this method and always keep your parent plant. If you don't keep your parent plant or choose a parent plant, your genetics will eventually become unstable. That's common royalty, when there were, birth defects and just complications with pregnancy, and maybe after they were born there was just the person had a lot of medical complications, just general genetic defects. It is real. That's why you want to keep the initial parent plant, and then breed the children back to the plant. It keeps that line stable without you having to look for genetics outside of that gene pool, and you can just kind of keep a nice stable plant going. And it does take a lot of time, so definitely do one type at a time, and take your time with it. Do not try and use it as your main crop initially until you get the genetics down. Otherwise, if you're homesteading, there's a good possibility your whole crop will die because you're genetically unstable. It's something that you just kind of have off on the side, all to your lonesome. Some people will do genetic hunts indoors just because it helps isolate. So, like a tomato, they have the flowers here. I can take a paintbrush from one parent plant and then brush it onto the next one, and they have now bred in the direction that I chose. So that definitely does help. So be safe, have fun at the end of the day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and we will see you guys out there. Peace.